they were coming down, and there would be an enormous insurance payout. And we see that there indeed has been an enormous insurance payout. Larry Silverstein demanded a, quote, double occurrence for the fall of those twin towers, which meant that he claimed twice $3.55 billion, and the most amazing thing is evidently received it. A court awarded Silverstein Properties and the other claimants $4.8 billion last April, and they're trying to get their full claim fulfilled as we sit here now. So it is entirely suspicious, the circumstances of the award to Silverstein Properties and the subsequent insurance payouts. I think that is well worth further investigation by a body that has been entrusted to examine the crimes of 9/11/01. We should also look briefly at the overall insurance profits that occurred after 2001 if we are going to look into the financial establishment of the United States. Two of the leading insurance companies in the United States are Berkshire Hathaway and the American International Group. Berkshire Hathaway is headed by Warren Buffett, the supposed second richest man in the world. American International Group was headed by Maurice Greenberg, who was a former chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Now, these insurance companies were able to charge enormous increases in their premiums after 9/11/01 into a market that had been flat before the destruction of those buildings. So we look at sales of Berkshire Hathaway in the year 2000 being $24 billion and some dollars, but by 2003 rising to $42 billion and some odd dollars. We look at AIG with sales of $40 billion some dollars in 2000, rising in 2003 to $69 billion some dollars. In short, they both gained about 40% in sales in those 3 years, and it's directly attributable to the atrocities that were committed on September 11th, 2001. Lastly, in terms of dealing with the immediate financial returns from the atrocities of 9/11/01, I'd like us to consider opium in Afghanistan. We well know about the oil from Iraq. We know about the pipelines that were wanted through Afghanistan for the Caspian Sea oil. That's been well explicated in even mainstream media. But what is very little mentioned in mainstream media or so-called left media is the opium from Afghanistan and its absolutely crucial role in the world's legal and illegal economies. At the time of September 11th, 2001, the Taliban, the government of Afghanistan at that time, had reduced the amount of opium production within their territory to nothing, really. You know, it had gone from 3,500 metric tons within all of Afghanistan to 187 metric tons. And all those tons were grown by farmers under the control of the Northern Alliance. And what that meant to the world's illegal economy was they lost $180 billion because that's what that opium was worth by the time it reached the streets of the West. That's a United Nations estimate. It's repeatedly cited in terms of its value. But what it means more importantly, more consequentially to the orchestrators, I would like you to further investigate, ladies and gentlemen of the grand jury, is its value to the world's legal economy. When those narcotics profits are channeled through the world's leading financial institutions, through the Chase Bank, through Barclays Bank, through Bank of America, because then the value of that $180 billion becomes the almost unimaginable sum of $3.6 trillion. And what that means to us, living as we do in the United States, is that we are complicit with a criminal economy. We're complicit with an economy that depends on people being addicted to heroin around the world. That's what the invasion of Afghanistan was primarily about. And I think we need to recognize that fundamental about 9/11/01. And in the last several minutes of my presentation to you, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to consider what we are about altogether in terms of our standing here, our intention, our moral calling. There have been several fine individuals who have come forward over the last 18 months and have asked people to consider what they should do as citizens of the world. And I think we're not only U.S. citizens in this grand jury, in this proceedings, we are citizens of the world. And we need to examine what has happened to our United States through its manipulation by the very financiers we can see as profiting most integrally from the terrible crimes of 9/11/01 and the even more terrible crimes that ensued from the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. We really have to look at the very center of the world we inhabit. And I think that is the truly happy and liberating aspect of our task, because once we begin to see to the bottom of 9/11/01, we can really begin to consider alternatives that are there for us in terms of changing our way of life and somehow combating the situations that we're put in. Because I think 9/11/01 was evidence of the entire desperation of the economic system we inhabit. If you look at the amounts of debt that have been contracted by the world's leading financial institutions, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citibank, the trillions of dollars that they hold in liabilities from derivatives, you'll see that they can only go from one act of terror, one war to the next in order to sustain themselves. And they can only sustain themselves through sacrificing us on days like 9/11/01, when more than 2,000 innocent people perished in the fall of those towers, sacrificing us in deserts of Iraq and Afghanistan, U.S. servicemen, and more importantly, to me, sacrificing so many more thousands and millions of the world's people to sustain their basically irrational and destructive economic engine. So our task here today is to consider whether or not these principles I've mentioned are worthy of investigation, at the least, for their roles in the predicament that led to 9/11/01, which I assert is an economic predicament, fundamentally, that can only be answered in terms of a moral choice to alter the economy we choose to support. That is a larger question. The specific question, again, to return to my role as very amateur attorney, is whether or not